Hello and welcome to my channel. This video will be a short tutorial on how to create tints, tones, and shades with your colored pencils. Remember, if you guys like this kind of video, to give it a thumbs up so that I know what kind of video to bring you guys in the future. If you want to see more adult coloring videos like this one, please subscribe to my channel. Subscribing really helps in supporting my channel. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you will be notified whenever I upload more adult coloring videos. Now let's have some fun and get into this tutorial. So on my Facebook group, we had a color along where everyone was to color something in a monochromatic coloring scheme. Well, I wanted to review a little of what that is and how to go about creating one by just focusing on tints, tones, and shades. If you need help with learning about color schemes and color theory, I have a tutorial on just that. I will link it to the top of this video so that you guys can go back and take a look at that if you like. So first, what is a tint, a tone, or a shade exactly? Well, all of this can be explained by adding something to it. For example, you can change a hue or color by adding to it. And I have my color wheel here. And I just wanted to show you guys that as you see on the color wheel, each color has a little slot. And as the color goes down, it changes from a darker blue to a lighter blue. That's its tints and tones, and that's its tints and shades. So each color on a color spectrum scale has a color ratio from 0 to 100 of its color value, and each one goes from a dark to a lighter color. And that's how you get your tints, tones, and shades. So I made a little worksheet for us, of course, because I always make a worksheet when I'm doing a tutorial on how to explain how this goes. And I will get that out now. So we're going to use my little worksheet and I just made a couple boxes just to explain how a tint, a tone, and a shade goes. So first we're going to focus on a shade. And what is a shade? A shade is a hue. And when I say hue is just another word for color. So you can put color in that sentence and say shade is just a color. So shade is just a hue that can be darkened or made less intense by adding black to it. And so we're just going to write up in the box, right above this box, we're going to write shade. And a tone, and then we're going to write down here what to add to it to make a shade. And to add, what you're adding to the shade is you're adding black to it. So we're going to put a little arrow because that's what we're going to add to it. And let me just zoom in so you guys can see a little better, because I want you to be focused on this little box. One second. Okay. So now we're zoomed in on this box. So we have a shade, and to create a shade, you add black to it. So we're just going to put black down here. And the next one is a tone. And a tone is a color being neutralized with gray to keep the same color value, but it changes the intensity or the saturation of the color. So we're going to write tone up here in the third box, and tone, what you add to tone to make a tone, what you add to the color is gray. So we're just going to put gray down here. And remember that when you do a tone, the color value does not change. It keeps the same color value, but it changes the intensity of the color. So the color is not as intense, but it still keeps the value. With black, it changes the intensity when you add black to shade, to a color, to make a shade. The next one is tint. And what do you add to a tint, a color to make a tint? You add white. So we're going to put white down here. And a tint is a hue lightened and made less intense by adding white to it. It tones down the color. So when you add white to a hue, it'll lighten it up and it'll also tone down the color. I always say that it makes it looks like a little muted, but that's just my opinion. It kind of makes the color look muted, and I use white very often. The one that I use the less here is the black, because black is really intense. And so if you're using that on a coloring page, you want to make sure that you're not changing the intensity that much, unless that's how much you want to change it. But be careful when you're using black. And usually when I use black, I use very little of it. Now gray and white I use more often than I use black. But we're going to see how a color or a hue changes when we add these black, gray, and white to a color. And so I'm going to use my Prismacolor pencil in this tutorial. And the color that I picked to use for this little quick tutorial, because this tutorial is going to be kind of quick, is my yellow orange PC1002 if you're following along. And we're just going to shade in, we're just going to color in this first box with the orange, just so we get a look of how it looks. And so we're going to put orange all the way across here so we know how it looked before we add black, gray, and white. So I'm just going to go ahead and shade these 3 boxes in. And I'm just going to turn my sheet a little bit just so I can go ahead and do that at an angle. And I'm going to try to get it as dark as I can get it, because I want to see the natural color of the orange, and I want to show you guys the natural color of the orange before we add any other color to it. The reason I picked orange is because this was the closest color I could find in my pencils that was actually a true color. Even though it's yellow orange, it's not that yellow that I can find was a true color. Every other color is not really a true color in the Prisma set. And so I wanted to do an example with a true color. And so now I'm just going to go back across this the other way, just to make sure I get that all in there. And I'm just going to do it one more time and put another layer on it, so that we have our shade, our color for our shade. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in tone and tint, but I'm going to speed up the video while I do that. Okay, so now we have our orange in, and that's what our orange is looking like. And so now we're just gonna make a shade. And remember, a shade is just a hue that can be darker or made less intense by adding black to it. So we're gonna add our black to the orange. And the first one we're just gonna do very light, because if I was doing a coloring page, I would actually only add a little bit depending on what my coloring page was. And we're going to see what that does and how that changes the value of the color when we add black to our orange. And so I'm going to hold the pencil further back because I just want to do a light shade. When you want to do darker, you want to hold the pencil further up. So I'm going to hold the pencil way back here, and I'm just going to slightly lay that down, and I'm trying to do as light as I can. But remember, it's black, so black is very intense by itself. And I'm just laying a little bit of that black in there. I'm barely touching the page. And so now we have a light layer of black in there. And so now I'm going to add my orange. And usually when I'm doing this, I would add, depending on if the color is a light color or a dark color. But usually I would add my color first and then add the black on top wherever I want it. But because we're doing this as a demonstration in boxes and not on a picture, I'm doing it this way so you guys can see how it looks. And so I'm just going to lay my orange in there. And I'm actually going to bring my finger up a little bit so that I can get a little more control. And you notice right away as I start to put that orange in there, it's almost immediately turning a brown color. I can see that it's changing the value a lot, the intensity in this color a lot. And so usually with your lighter colors like orange, it's going to change. Black is going to change it a lot. So like depending on what you want to do and what you want your page to look like is how you're going to pick which one of these you want to use. And this is why I don't use black very often. But I do use it. It's because it really changes that color. And it's almost making it a brown color if you look at it. And I don't know if you guys can see that. See how it's making that color almost like brown. And I didn't put much black on it. I put very little black. So I'm just adding more orange in there so we can see the orange. And so that's how it would look if you was to add black to it. Now, let's add a little more black. We're going to go in a little heavier than that and see what color, what shade we come up with. And I'm just going to go darker than what I went before. So I'm just maybe going like medium pressure and laying that black down. But this is how intense black is. And this is why you want to be careful with whatever color you're using to decide what color you want to use to change the tone and the value of your color, to change the saturation of your color. So now I've added a lot of black there, and I'm going to add my orange again. And let's see what that looks like. You barely can see that orange now. You see how you barely can see the orange? It really, really takes away from that color. And it's almost black. It's like a grayish black. I don't know, like a brownish black. It's not black, it's brown kind of. But do you see the difference in the intensity in that. And I'm just trying to get an even coverage here. So after doing this, I'll have to clean off my orange pencil because it'll get some black on my orange, and I don't want that to carry on into anything else that I color. But so if I was doing a coloring page, and say for instance I was doing a pumpkin, because a pumpkin is orange, would I choose black to intensify my color? No, I don't think I would. Unless I wanted to look this color. And maybe if I was doing bark or tree bark, this color would probably be fine. Because I can see and I can picture some tree bark with a little bit of orange in it and black. So there are situations where black could work. But it just depends on what you're coloring and what color you're using. Like for instance, if I was using red, I think red would look a lot better with black than orange would. And I wouldn't intensify, I wouldn't lose so much of that orange like I lost here. So I wanted you to see how the hue changes and how making a shade with black makes it less intense. It can be darkened and made less intense. And so yes, now you barely can see the orange. It's definitely less intense the more black I used in the orange. So now we're going to go on to the gray, and I'm just going to clean my pencil off first really quick. Okay, so now I've cleaned my pencil some. I want to make sure I don't get any black in the next one that we're doing. So the next one is a tone, and a tone is a color that's being neutralized. Remember, it doesn't change the intensity when you use gray. You still have the same intensity, but it neutralizes the color. I'm sorry, you still have the same value, but it changes the intensity of the color. That's what I meant to say. So a tone is when you add gray. So I chose gray, and I chose a 20% gray. And one thing I want you to know about when you choose your gray, you usually have your warm gray and your cool grays. If you have a warm color or a cool color, you want to use the same gray with that. And because orange is considered a warm color, I chose a warm gray. So I chose my 20% warm gray. They also have in this set a 30% warm gray and I think it's a 50% warm gray. This is a lot of grays in this set. But this is basically what you would use your grays for, to change the color, to change the hue color. You could use your gray for that. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. So I'm just going to add gray in this box. And I'm just going to add a little bit of gray at first, very lightly. So my finger is way to the back, because I'm just shading it in. And you barely can see it on camera, but it's there. I promise you guys it's a color laying there. And now I'm going to add my orange to that gray and see what happens to the orange. And as you can see, not a big difference. Not a big difference like the black. It's being neutralized by it. And it's keeping the same color value. It's still orange. But it changed the intensity a little bit. Not very much, just a little bit. But it's still orange. It's not brownish orange. It's not, you know, a different color orange. It's still yellow orange. And if you look at that orange compared to that orange, I don't see much of a big difference to that. And I just added a very light layer. So let's go to the second one, the third box, and add a darker layer and see what we get. So I'm going to move my finger up on the pencil, and I'm going to add a darker layer here. And I'm trying not to press too hard because I just want a medium layer. But gray is kind of light, so. Okay. So we have our layer of gray. Now we're just going to go ahead and lay down our orange and see what it does to it. And look at that. It still has that orange color, but the intensity definitely changes. And I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but it's almost like it's almost like it's a darker orange, but it's still orange. Which that's how you get a darker orange, but still orange. So when you don't want to change your color's value, which means you don't want to change the look of the color, you just want to change the darkness of it. Gray is a great color to use. And so I'm just putting as much orange as I can on there. But yeah, so it looks definitely much darker than that one if you look at it. But it still has orange to it. It's not turning into brown, which is the reason you would use gray. Now let's move on to our tint. And I said our tint is just a hue lightened and made less intense by adding white. And so because this is white, I don't want to just add white here on the paper. You're not going to see that. I'm going to add the color first and then add a little white to it. That way you'll be able to see it and I'll be able to see it. So I'm just going to add my orange here, and I'm just going to add my orange very lightly. So I'm going to bring my finger back a little bit. I'm not going to add too much orange. It looks like I need to sharpen my pencil. So you always want to keep a sharp lead or turn your lead so that that lead can get into that paper. So I'm definitely going to sharpen on the next one. So we added our orange, and we're just going to add a little bit of white to this orange and see. And because this orange is so light, I don't know if we'll see a big difference, but we can try. So let's add our white to it. And I'm not going to add a whole lot of white because this is just our medium. We'll add a lot in the next box. So I'm just adding a little bit of white. And it should lighten the color a little bit, because that's what white does. It lightens the color. It also makes it look a little muted. And if you see, it looks a little lighter than that one. I don't know if you can see on camera very well, but it definitely looks lighter than that one. It actually looks lighter than all of those. So I'm going to go to the next one, and we're just going to add a little more white. So I'm going to add the orange first. Actually, I'm going to sharpen my pencil. Okay, I sharpened my pencil, so now I'm just going to add some orange. And I'm going to go back over it again. One more little layer. Get that as dark as possible. And so now I'm going to add my white. And another thing is when you add your white to a different color, if this was a different color, you need to make sure to clean off your white. And this time I'm going in with hard pressure and I'm putting a lot of white in there. And not only does it lighten it, it also helps smooth out. And that's why you can use white to burnish also. And if you need help on that video, I think I have a video here on how to use your white to burnish on the blending video. And I will link that video to the top of this video if you want to go back and take a look at that. But look at that. I'm putting a lot of white in here. You see what that white is doing to this orange? It's not the same color anymore. It's almost a peach color now. And I don't know if you can see very well on camera, but it's kind of peachy. And it also smoothed out the tooth of the paper. So the tooth of the paper is not coming through as much as it was in there. But this is the one I like to use the most, is white. If I want to darken it, I like to use gray. Because gray, you see how when I did the medium, it didn't change it that much. Now if I did a darker gray, it changes it a lot. And this is how it would look if you were on a color spectrum. Your shade, your tone, and your tint. It goes from the regular color. I would like to see how it looks from the regular color down to the when you add the other color, the black, or down to the gray, or down to the white. We added more as we got to the bottom. And that's how you would use your shade. That's how you would shade, tone, or tint. And that's how you would use your blacks, your grays, and your whites. And that's the reason why you have a lot of grays also in your pencil set. Is because you have warm grays and you have cool grays. And you want to match those grays up to a warm color or a cool color. You also have percentage of grays. It has so much. A gray is usually white and black added to a pencil. So that's what gray is made of. So gray is you're adding both black and white. And that's basically what you're adding when you add gray to your coloring projects. Another way, and I didn't write a box for this, but I do want to share it with you. There's one more way that you can change your color, a hue or color. And another way you can change it and it'll darken it up is by using your color wheel and by using, let me zoom out just a little so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So here we have the color wheel. You can also change your colors by using the opposite of your color wheel. So for instance, I had orange here. And I'm going to look for yellow orange here in my color wheel, and yellow orange is right here. So now I have the thing on yellow orange. The opposite of yellow orange is, wait, I want to make sure that's right. Okay. The opposite of yellow orange, I think, is blue violet. Yeah, that's the opposite of yellow orange. The opposite of yellow orange is blue violet. So, and blue violet is right here. I don't know if you guys can see it. But so, in order to darken the color, I would lay your orange down, and then I would pick my blue violet and lay that on top of it, and that could also darken it. So remember that you can always use the opposite of your color that's on the color wheel. So for instance, if I wanted to do red, the opposite of red would be green on my color wheel. Because here's red, and then on my color wheel, green is right across from it. So if I wanted to lay red down in a box, I could lay red down in a box and then put green on top of it. And I could change the color value of my color. That's just a little trick that I wanted you guys to also know. So I have one more example to show you guys, and it's a coloring. So this is a picture I did in the coloring book Fairy Touch of Magic. It actually looks like this on the outside. And it's by Klara Markova. It's a nice book. I love it. I like the paper that's in it. So this is a picture I'm working on still. I'm actually still working on this picture. I haven't had time to get back to it since I started doing videos. But I just want to show you how I used black in this picture and how I made the color more intense by using black. And if you can look right here at this candle, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you guys can see just a little more. So if you look at this candle has a couple colors in it. I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually purple. It looks blue on camera as I'm looking at it, but it's actually purple. To make this purple darker, I wanted to intensify it, and there was no other darker color. There was no darker purple in the pencil set to make this color darker. So what I did was I took black and I added black to some areas of the picture to intensify the color. And I've added it in the little drops around here, and I also added a little at the top. That's what you can do with black when you're trying to intensify your colors. I also did that in the hat. I wanted the outside of the hat to be darker, and there is no darker purple in the set, so I put a little black around it, and you see how it intensified it and just brought out that color way more than what it would have been. And now it's like that hat is really popping, and you can really see the dimension in that hat because I put that black on the edges of there to bring that purple out. Black really works well with purple, so you can do it with purple. I also did it with brown. I did it in this brown wood. I put it along the edges here so that it could pop because there was no darker brown. I also did it in the bear at the bottom. I put a little black on this bear around the edges of it so that it could be darker and around the ear. This is just what you can do. Of course, I added it to the gray bear because the gray was not as dark as I wanted it to be. So I added black to the gray bear also. I think I added some gray to this orange down here. I added some gray right around here, not black, gray. So I still kept the same orange color, but it made it a darker orange. And so I just wanted to show that example to you guys on how you would do this if you were doing it in a coloring page. You wouldn't put it everywhere. You would just put it in certain areas of your page to darken it up. And so that is going to be the end of this video, the end of this tutorial. So I'm just going to zoom out, and thank you guys for joining me for this little short tutorial. I hope you learned something with your grays, your blacks, and your whites, and how to do a tint, tone, and shade. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a colorful day. Bye.